The morning sun painted Lagos Island in shimmering hues of wealth and struggle. From the windows of the high-rise towers of Victoria Island, the city appeared golden, thriving, invincible. But down below, in the thick, oil-scented air, reality told a different story. Lamborghinis revved their engines beside keikis wobbling over potholes. Security guards in sleek black suits manned the entrances of skyscrapers, while barefoot children chased empty water sachets along gutters. And among the hundreds who drifted like shadows through this elite chaos was Itoro. He sat on a faded sackcloth, just outside Zenith Grand Towers, the tallest and most intimidating building on Ozumba Mbadiwe. Each morning, by 6:30 a.m., Itoro would limp his way across the street from the underbridge where he slept. His left leg dragged slightly behind him, a reminder of some accident he never spoke of. His face was quiet, unreadable. His eyes, though young, carried the heavy residue of a life that had seen too much. Most passers-by ignored him. He never begged loudly. He didn't extend his hand. He simply sat, a paper cup placed beside him, eyes lowered, lips occasionally moving in what seemed like silent prayers. The guards at Zenith Grand had long stopped paying him any mind. He was part of the background, like the smell of diesel or the hawkers selling plantain chips at the bus stop. Inside those gleaming towers, a different life pulsed. Chief Dimeji Omoboriowo stood at the top floor of the building that bore his legacy. A billionaire many times over, his empire spanned fintech, oil servicing, real estate, and Nigeria's most advanced artificial intelligence startup. But today, he wasn't thinking about business. Today was personal. His only daughter, Adesewa Omoboriowo, was getting engaged to Tokunbo Ajayi, son of the vice president and heir to a powerful political dynasty. The union was going to be the most talked-about wedding in Nigeria's elite circles: tech money marrying old money, politics. And as Chief admired the custom gold and glass centerpiece prepared for the engagement party that night, he felt the familiar ache in his chest, not physical, not medical, something deeper. He had everything money could buy. But something someone was always missing. Downstairs, Adesewa was pacing in the driveway, phone pressed to her ear, shouting at her wedding planner. She wore a rose-gold Ankara gown, glittering sandals, and enough diamonds to fund a small state. As she spun in frustration, her diamond engagement ring worth over 180 million slipped off her finger, bounced once on the cobbled driveway, and rolled toward the street. No one noticed. Not the valet opening the door, not the guard staring into space, but Itoro saw it. It landed just a few feet away from him, catching the morning light like fire. He stared at it, this small, glinting thing that had the power to change his life in seconds. One sale on the black market, and he'd never sleep under a bridge again. He could buy a room, new clothes, even a small generator. Maybe go back to Calabar. Maybe even eat proper food for a month. His fingers hovered over it. His eyes darted left and right. But then he did something strange. He picked it up, held it gently in his palm like it was sacred, and began limping toward the building. The security guard at the glass door squinted. "Wetin you dey find?" "I saw this fall outside," Itoro said softly, extending the ring. The receptionist looked up, her eyes widening. "That's not real, is it?" Itoro said nothing more, just placed it on the marble counter and turned around to leave. "No reward?" the guard asked mockingly. But Itoro had already limped back to his corner on the pavement, sat down, and bowed his head again. An hour later, Chief Dimeji was informed. He was reading an email when his receptionist entered. "Sir." "The ring." Adesewa's ring. A street beggar returned it. Chief looked up sharply. "A what?" she explained. "A beggar. Limp. Always sits by the fountain. Didn't say a word beyond returning the ring. No name. No threats. No phone." Chief stood still. A chill crawled up his back. In all his years of life, betrayal had come even from those closest to him. His own relatives had stolen. His business partners had lied. But a nameless beggar returned a ring worth more than his entire wardrobe? "Find him," Chief whispered. "Before the day ends. Find him." Adesiwa rolled her eyes when she heard, "Daddy, it's just a ring." He probably didn't know what it was. Chief didn't respond, but something had shifted inside him. That night the party was a spectacle. The elite of Lagos gathered in a glowing ballroom filled with chandeliers imported from Paris. Champagne flowed like water. Camera lights flashed. Tokunbo gave a speech about legacy and building Nigeria's future. Adesewa laughed too loudly. Chief nodded politely, but his mind wasn't there. It was with a young boy on the street who could have stolen his future, but chose to return it. Later that night, long after the final guest left, Chief entered his study. He loosened his agbada, poured himself a glass of palm wine, and stared at the old black and white photo on his desk. Eket, the girl he had loved once in another lifetime. The only girl who had never asked him for anything. He thought of the boy's face. Something about his jawline. Something familiar. Then, pain. Sudden. Sharp. Brutal. His chest. He gasped, knocking over the glass. "God," he whispered, stumbling forward. His fingers clawed toward the intercom. Missed it. He crashed to the floor, his heart pounding like thunder in his ears. Outside, the night wind whispered across the island. The city didn't stop. But inside Zenith Grand Towers, Nigeria's most powerful man lay collapsed in his own study, heart faltering, thoughts spiraling to a beggar with a diamond, and a name he hadn't heard in 28 years. The year was 1987, and Ibadan still smelled like rain-soaked earth and charcoal fires. In the heart of Bodija, where rusted zinc roofs met lush green trees, a younger, slimmer Dimeji Omoboriowo walked the dusty footpaths barefoot, holding nothing but dreams and a spiral notebook. He wasn't chief back then. He wasn't even a graduate, just a boy with wild ambition and a broken typewriter, working late hours at the roadside cyber cafe, fixing printers and bootleg software to pay his school fees at the Polytechnic. And it was during one of those long nights, fingers blackened by toner ink, that he met Eket. She wasn't like the other girls. No loud laughter, no chasing trends, just grace, quiet, and natural like still water. Her father sold roasted maize, and her mother wove baskets by the road. Poor, yes, but proud. And Eket? She was the brightest girl in her tailoring class, sewing wedding gowns for brides who never paid on time. Dimeji saw her once beneath the mango tree near Sango Junction, humming while threading a needle, and just like that, he stopped believing he needed riches to feel full. They loved each other in whispers and glances, in hurried walks along the railway track, in late-night letters written on the backs of receipt paper. They had nothing, but with her, Dimeji had everything, until Lagos came calling. He got a scholarship, a job offer, an internship at a data processing firm in Marina. Everyone cheered him on, even Eket. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "Make me proud, but don't forget me." But time and Lagos were cruel teachers. Months became years. Calls slowed down. The company grew. And one day, he met Ireti, the dazzling daughter of a tech mogul. Marriage was an empire move. Eket was a shadow he forced into silence. What he didn't know was that Eket had fallen pregnant shortly after he left. She never told him. She didn't want to be that girl holding him back. Instead, she gave birth alone, her father dead, her mother blind, and her baby boy screaming into a world that didn't wait for anyone. His name was Itoro. Back to the present. The air in the hospital was heavy with antiseptic and silence. Chief Dimeji Omoboriowo lay on the recovery bed, pale against white sheets. Machines beeped rhythmically, echoing time he could no longer waste. Through the glass doors, a nurse led someone in. Itoro stood awkwardly at the foot of the bed, eyes lowered, cap in hand. The hospital gown they gave him looked too big, and his sandals squeaked with every shift. "You," Chief whispered, voice raspy. "You came. They said you wanted to see me, sir." "Sir." The word stung. "You're the one who returned the ring." Itoro nodded. "I didn't want Wahala, just thought it should go back to who owned it." There was something in the boy's voice, steady, soft, yet firm. Something familiar. "You live around here?" "Under the bridge. Sometimes Lekki Phase 1. Depends on which last Ma officer day patrol that night." You don't have family? Itoro shrugged. People like me stopped asking that question. Chief studied him. His jawline, the slope of his nose, his left hand had a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon. Do you want anything? Chief asked. Yes, Itoro said. Chief leaned forward, expecting something. Bread, he finished. Agay, if una get. Chief blinked. No money? No phone? No help? I don't like debt, sir. Bread is fine. The next day, while Lagos rushed back into chaos, Chief did something he hadn't done in years. He called his private investigator. Oba Banjo, a former SSS agent turned shadow broker, had found lost heirs, hidden assets, and secret mistresses for the elite. But this task was different. I need you to trace someone. A boy. Homeless. Goes by Itoro. Limp on his left leg. Quiet. Possibly from Calabar or Ibadan originally. Banjo paused. Why? Chief hesitated. Because. He reminds me of someone I loved. A long time ago. Banjo didn't ask further. He never did. As the days passed, Chief recovered slowly, but his obsession grew. He canceled meetings, ignored business calls. Each time he saw Itoro, he saw Iket's eyes, the way the boy didn't ask for anything, the way he carried his silence like armor. He ordered background checks, fingerprints, DNA swabs from the hospital. He even called an old professor from Ibadan Poly. One evening, Banjo returned. He didn't speak, just handed Chief a weathered manila envelope. Inside, a photograph, a faded black and white image of Iket, holding a baby wrapped in patterned cloth, standing outside a roadside clinic. She couldn't have been older than 20. Her eyes looked tired, but proud. Chief's hands trembled. He pulled the photo closer. The baby had his nose, his mouth, his birthmark. I had this taken from a nun in Calabar who runs a shelter, Banjo said. She remembered Iket. Said the boy ran away after her funeral, never saw him again. Chief couldn't breathe. All these years, all that silence. And he had a son lost in Lagos, sitting outside his own building, begging for coins. He turned the photo over. There, in thin ink, was written, Itoro. Gift from God. The room spun. He gripped the edge of his desk, eyes burning, heart pounding again. But this time, it wasn't pain. It was regret. It was recognition. It was too late. Or maybe not. The silence in Chief Dimeji Omoborio's study was thick as he stared at the photograph of a baby he never knew he had, his son, Itoro. The picture felt like a key, unlocking doors in his heart he had sealed shut decades ago. He clutched the image like a sacred relic, his fingers trembling. Itoro, he whispered, the name suddenly reverent, as though speaking it out loud would summon Iket back from the grave. But she was gone, had been gone for years, and in her absence, the boy she raised there, the boy had walked through hell with bare feet, and Dimeji had never even known. Flashback. 1,990 seconds, Calabar. In a narrow two-room house with rusted metal doors, Iket hummed a lullaby as she bathed baby Itoro in a plastic basin. The light bulb above flickered like a dying star, but she smiled through the darkness. Her hands were rough from laundry jobs, her back bent from sweeping offices she could never afford to work in. Yet every night, she made Itoro giggle with songs about stars and rivers, teaching him to count using beans and matchsticks. But the years were unkind. She fought silently against the tumors growing in her womb, hiding her pain behind headscarves and soft smiles. When the cancer took over, she wrote letters to orphanages, asking them to protect her son. She died clutching a rosary and a torn photo of Dimeji. Itoro was 6 when he was dropped off at Mama Ngozi's children's home. It was not a home, it was a graveyard for forgotten dreams. Older boys beat him, caretakers stole his clothes. His cries went unanswered. He ran, first to Onitsha, then to Port Harcourt, finally to Lagos, where the streets swallowed him whole. Back in the present, Chief Dimeji sat across from Itoro in the guest lounge of his mansion, the boy still unaware of the truth. He had invited him over under the guise of thanks, offering him food and clean clothes. Itoro sat stiffly, unused to the softness of the cushion beneath him, or the silence of a home without generator noise. "You said your mother's name was Ikaede?" Chief asked softly. "Yes, sir." "What happened to her?" "Cancer. She died when I was 6. I remember her hands and her voice. Not much else." Chief looked away, blinking hard. "And your father?" Itoro shrugged. "She never mentioned him. Maybe he died too. Maybe he never cared." Those words struck like thunder. "I'm sorry," Chief whispered. Itoro shook his head. "You didn't do anything." But he had. Or rather, he hadn't. After Itoro left, Chief called his lawyer, Barrister Agata, a man who had stood beside him for 25 years. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, his hand still unsteady. "I need to change my will." Agata looked up. "Chief, there's a boy, Itoro. He's mine, my blood. I just confirmed it. DNA, documents, photos, everything matches." Agata blinked, stunned. "Itoro, Adisewa. She'll never accept it." "Then why not keep it quiet, sir? Take care of the boy privately, outside the will." Chief slammed the table, his voice low but volcanic. "Because I've lied to myself long enough. Ikaet died because I wasn't there. Itoro suffered because I forgot her. This is not charity. This is justice." Agata hesitated. "And the company? I'm rewriting everything. Itoro will inherit the empire. Sole heir." Agata nodded solemnly. "As you wish." But secrets never stay silent in mansions with glass walls. Adisewa had returned from a business meeting early and heard murmurs from the study. She paused behind the mahogany double doors, just as Agata's voice slipped through. The boy, Itoro, as sole heir, her breath caught. Sole heir? Her father, her protector, her teacher, her idol was naming a street beggar over her? She staggered backward, the blood draining from her face. Number. This had to be a mistake. She stormed back upstairs, heart pounding, hands shaking, eyes blazing, inside her designer walk-in closet, surrounded by gowns flown in from Milan and jewelry boxes worth more than some people's lives. She sat down and stared into her vanity mirror. For the first time in her life, Adisewa Omoboriowo didn't recognize the reflection staring back at her. How could he do this? How could he choose that boy? The boy who sat on pavement, smelling like sewage and diesel? Her fingers curled into fists. Number. This wasn't over. Meanwhile, Chief's obsession only deepened. He canceled meetings, neglected projects, and stopped taking international calls. Instead, he spent hours walking the gardens with Itoro, talking about the world, dreams, technology, and history. He watched Itoro's mind light up when he explained AI or renewable energy. The boy was raw genius wrapped in humility. But Itoro sensed something deeper. One evening, as they watched the koi fish gliding through a marble pond, he turned to Chief. "Sir, why are you doing all this for me?" Chief hesitated. "I think I failed someone a long time ago, and helping you helps me breathe again." Itoro didn't push, but deep in his heart, he wondered if this was what having a father felt like. And elsewhere, deep within the spirals of privilege and power, Adisewa was planning her next move. The evening air inside the Omoboriowo estate was thick with rage. Glasses clinked in the kitchen, faint jazz music floated in from the sitting room, but in the upper corridor, silence had become a weapon. Adisewa stood at the threshold of her father's study, her eyes blazing. "You can't be serious," she spat. Chief Demeji looked up from his paperwork, adjusting his reading glasses. "Sewa, I'm not in the mood," she stormed in, slamming the door behind her. "You're changing your will? Giving everything to a beggar boy who doesn't even know how to use a fork?" Chief sighed. "Itoro is not a beggar. He's my what?" she snapped. "Don't say brother. Don't you dare say that word." Her voice cracked. I built your legacy with you. I studied business because you told me I'd lead the company one day. I sacrificed relationships, friendships, my youth for this family. And now, this? Chief stood, slow and weary. I failed him, Adesewa. I failed Ekaet. I can't undo the past, but I can try to do right now. You're sick, she whispered. You're losing your mind. Her heels echoed violently down the hallway as she left. Moments later, her fingers were dialing fast. Tokunbo Ajayi answered on the second ring. Talk to me, he said. We have a problem. Tokunbo was many things: handsome, polished, the son of a vice president, but under the tailored suits and media-trained smile was a mind that fed on leverage. He listened as Adesewa paced the marble floor, explaining everything. When she was done, he sipped his whiskey and smirked. A homeless heir in Nigeria? It's a PR disaster waiting to happen. I need your help. You'll have it, but we do it the smart way, not by fighting fire, by letting him burn himself. Meanwhile, in a private dining room lit with soft candles and the scent of suya-spiced jollof rice, Chief Demeji sat across from Itoro, who wore a new suit that still felt stiff on his shoulders. The room was silent but not tense. Itoro watched as Chief poured him a glass of zobo and cleared his throat. There's something you deserve to know. Itoro lowered his fork. I knew your mother, deeply. We loved each other when we were both young. I didn't know she was pregnant when I left. If I had known. His voice broke. Itoro sat motionless, his mouth dry. You're saying I'm your son? Chief nodded. Itoro stood up, eyes wide, the room spinning around him. That's not possible. My father, my mother never said anything. She would have told me. She didn't want to burden you. Burden? Itoro's voice cracked. You think I wanted this? I've lived in gutters, been kicked like a dog, starved in the streets, and now you say I'm a billionaire's son? He turned away, shaking. I don't want your money. It's not about money, Chief said softly. It's about identity, blood, truth. The next morning, he quietly arranged for a DNA test. No press, no noise, just certainty. But the streets of Lagos have their own mouth and secrets don't stay silent. In a dimly lit editing suite in Lekki, a freelance media consultant received an anonymous email with a single line, Omoboriowo losing at Beggar boy to inherit empire. Attached were grainy pictures of Itoro entering the estate, eating at the table, wearing designer suits. The subject line spread like fire across WhatsApp groups and Twitter threads. Number billionaire madness, number street to CEO, number has chief lost it. Adesewa watched the chaos unfold online and felt her chest rise with bitter satisfaction. She added fuel by planting whispers into gossip blogs. Chief Demeji has been under mental pressure. Old age catching up with the mogul. Anonymous insiders question his recent decisions. Tokunbo arranged an interview with a former board member who said, Chief is no longer the man we once knew. The narrative shifted, and in the middle of it all, Itoro vanished. He left a short note on the side table in the guest house. I didn't come here to destroy lives. Thank you for everything. Please, don't look for me. Chief was furious. Heartbroken. Terrified. He deployed 4 security guards and 2 private trackers to comb the city. They searched under bridges, checked shelters, bribed Agboros at Oshodi. No trace. Until one morning, a guard spotted him near 3rd Mainland Bridge, giving leftover food to 2 children in tattered school uniforms. They approached him slowly. Itoro, your father wants you home. Itoro hesitated, staring at the children's hungry faces. Then he nodded. Back at the estate, Chief didn't speak immediately. He just embraced him. No words, just warmth. That night, the DNA envelope arrived. Chief opened it with shaking hands, heart pounding. His eyes scanned the bold letters. Probability of paternity, 99.9999% positive match. He closed his eyes. A lifetime of silence had come to an end. Rain fell softly over Lagos that morning, more drizzle than storm, but steady, soaking the bougainvillea petals outside the Omoboriowo estate. Inside, the mansion breathed a strange silence, broken only by the distant hum of the generator and the low crackle of the fireplace in the sitting room. Itoro sat on the window bench of the guest house, a steaming cup of tea in his hands, but his eyes stared far beyond the misted glass. Memories came to him uninvited. The days he wandered through Oshodi barefoot, selling empty bottles to recyclers for 20. Nights when he curled beneath the flyover, shielding himself from rain with nylon bags, stomach groaning from hunger. The mockery, the stares, the kicks, the way passers-by looked through him like he didn't exist, and worst of all, the silence of a world that never once asked his name. He clenched the mug tighter, as though it could ground him in this new reality, this world of soft beds, tailored clothes, and people calling him sir. But deep inside, the boy who had begged for scraps was still alive. Chief had insisted he move into the estate's guest house, a beautiful mini-mansion tucked at the back of the compound, complete with a study, gym, and 2 staff members on standby. Itoro accepted it quietly, but drew a firm line. "Please don't call me son," he said. Chief nodded solemnly, the words wounding him more than a slap, but he didn't argue. He knew healing could not be forced. Over the next week, Chief poured his energy into trying to make things right. He bought Itoro a new wardrobe, classic Nigerian designs mixed with international brands. He hired private tutors to teach him etiquette, financial management, and modern tech innovation. He introduced him to key staff in the company and took him on drives across Lekki, pointing out their family estates, factories, and holdings. But for every smile Itoro gave, there was a wall behind it. He listened politely. He thanked them all. But inside, he felt like a mannequin, dressed in another man's life. Meanwhile, Adesewa was not backing down. Her media campaign escalated with surgical precision. Influencers were paid to question the validity of the DNA test. Headlines blared, "Omoboriowo heir or hustler." Sources say Chief may be under duress, Beggar's background under investigation. She leaked clips of Itoro in tattered clothes, taken from security footage weeks ago, painting him as a street hustler who had manipulated a vulnerable old man. One evening, she posted a cryptic tweet: "Legacy should be earned, not handed to strangers who appear out of nowhere." The comment section exploded. Tokunbo, ever the tactician, took a different route. He began reaching out to board members of Omoboriowo Holdings, scheduling quiet dinners in expensive restaurants, whispering concerns about the chief's judgment, changing the heir without due consultation, sudden emotional shifts, canceling international meetings over a street boy. Is this the mind of a man fit to lead a billionaire empire? He planted doubts like seeds in dry soil, and they began to grow. Inside the estate, Chief began to feel the weight. He tried to maintain strength, but the whispers, the media noise, the betrayal from his daughter, it all swirled like a storm within him. One afternoon, during a strategy session with his executive team, he stood abruptly, clutching his chest. His knees buckled, his assistant screamed. They rushed him to the hospital again. Itoro was in the guest house when the call came. He didn't wait for a driver. He ran. Through the gardens, past the staff, onto the street. He flagged a kike like he had so many times before, ignoring the stares of those who recognized him. At the hospital, he burst through the double doors, eyes wild with fear. Chief lay on the bed, pale and sweating, IVs in both arms, the monitor beeping steadily. Itoro gripped his hand. "You're okay. You'll be okay." Chief turned his head slowly, eyes fluttering open. He whispered, "Don't let them take everything." Itoro swallowed hard. "Who?" "The ones who think blood is a title, not truth." And then he closed his eyes, slipping into sleep. Back at the boardroom, the storm was building. Adesewa entered in a navy blue power suit, flanked by Tokunbo and 2 of her legal advisors. The board members gathered, some looking uncomfortable, others curious. She stood at the head of the table and said with cool precision, "I am calling for an emergency vote to assess my father's capacity to lead. We need an independent medical evaluation and a formal review of recent decisions." Gasps echoed. Some protested. Others nodded. The chairman, an elderly man who had known Chief for 30 years, tapped the gavel. We will vote. Cliffhanger. The ballots were distributed, pens scratched, papers folded. The room fell into suspense. The chairman stood. In accordance with the rules of emergency corporate governance, he paused. The vote has passed. The emergency meeting will proceed. A storm was coming. And for Itoro, everything was about to change. The boardroom of Omoboriowo Holdings sat like a coliseum, marble floors, a grand mahogany table, leather chairs arranged in a ring of power. Men and women who shaped industries, controlled banks, and whispered into political ears sat in tailored suits, checking their Rolex watches and muttering into Bluetooth earpieces. But today, their attention was fixed on a stranger in the room. Itoro stood quietly near the entrance, dressed in a custom black kaftan that still felt unnatural on his skin. His heart thundered beneath the fabric, but his face remained still, composed, guarded. At the head of the table, Tokunbo Ajayi leaned back in his seat, fingers laced behind his head, exuding effortless arrogance. Well, Tokunbo said, loud enough for the room to hear. The heir has arrived, the prince of the potholes. The beggar turned billionaire. Chuckles rippled through the boardroom. Tell me, he continued, did you memorize any business strategy on the sidewalk, or are you just here to smile for the cameras? Itoro didn't flinch. I'm here, he said softly, because your fear has made space for me. Tokunbo blinked. You talk big. I talk because I have nothing to lose, and when you've lived on the street, fear becomes your friend, not your master. The room fell silent. He stepped forward, placing both palms gently on the table. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't inherit a seat at this table. I've slept beside gutters. I've eaten from waste bins. I've been beaten just for asking for water. But what I've learned on the street can't be taught in any boardroom. One board member, Mr. Bakare, leaned forward, intrigued. Itoro continued, my mother, Ekayet, used to say, clean hands stay poor longer, but they sleep better. I returned a diamond ring when I could have sold it. I walked away from a fortune twice. I didn't ask for this life. But if you think I'll walk away now, when you try to bury the man who gave me a name, then you don't know what survival means. Tokunbo's smirk faded. Itoro turned his eyes toward the chairman. I'm not here to replace Chief Demeji. I'm here to defend him. You all built this empire with him. You know his mind, his judgment. But now that he's chosen someone you didn't expect, suddenly he's mentally unstable? Murmurs spread across the room. He chose me because I'm his blood, and because I have the one thing none of you value anymore, humility. I've watched you from outside these gates for years, and now that I'm inside, I see that your pride is your greatest weakness. A tense silence stretched. Then Mr. Bakare slowly stood and extended his hand. You have your father's fire. Itoro hesitated, then shook it. The entire boardroom shifted. For the first time, the boy from the gutter wasn't just tolerated, he was heard. Outside, the media frenzy had reached boiling point. Dozens of journalists and photographers crowded the gates of Omoboriowo Holdings as word leaked from an anonymous source inside the building. Beggar boy addresses billionaire boardroom, Omoborio empire in crisis, son or stranger. Number Beggar boy Heir trended across Nigeria and beyond. When Itoro exited the building flanked by security, the flash of cameras nearly blinded him. Sir, are you the new CEO? Did Chief Demeji name you his heir officially? Were you really homeless? He said nothing, just walked forward, head high. The cameras followed, capturing every second of his silence. Back at the hospital, the corridors were quiet, save for the soft beeping of machines and the shuffle of nurses' shoes. Itoro walked slowly, unsure what to feel. Pride? Guilt? Confusion? He had stood up in front of Nigeria's most powerful men and defended his father. But the weight of it sat heavy on his chest. He longed to speak to Chief, to ask him, just once more, are you sure? As he reached the door to Chief's room, a voice stopped him. You think this is your house now? He turned. Adisewa stood there, her eyes red but dry, her face carved from ice. You walk around like you belong, like you earned this, but I see you. Her hand flew before he could respond. Slap. Itoro staggered back, stunned. You're a virus, she hissed, infecting everything I built. He said nothing, just stared at her with eyes that held no anger, only pain. Then he pushed the door open and entered, leaving her alone in the hallway, trembling with fury. The storm broke not with thunder, but with tweets. A single, blurry photo Itoro, standing in a boardroom, flanked by security, chin raised, wearing a black caftan, hit Twitter at exactly 7:42 p.m. Within minutes, it was retweeted by an entertainment blog, then a political analyst, then a major online newspaper. By 9 p.m., Beggar Boy Heir was the #1 trending hashtag across Nigeria. The headlines were chaotic, contradictory, and electric. Omoboriowo's shocking decision, from gutter to throne, legacy or lunacy. Street boy named Billionaire Heir, corporate Nigeria in meltdown, Omoboriowo empire shaken, the Cinderella boy. From Ojuelegba to Victoria Island, Instagram reels were edited with dramatic music, juxtaposing photos of Itoro in torn clothes beside images of him shaking hands with board members. TikTok creators mimicked his accent, creating skits where beggars became CEOs overnight. Some mocked, some empathized. A few influencers went live with fiery opinions. Let's be honest, fit be scripted. This whole thing na PR stunt a beg. Me, I support am. That boy returned a diamond worth millions. He deserves the world. But why now? Why when there's money involved? Smells fishy to me. Public opinion split cleanly down class lines. The elite whispered in their clubs and yacht parties, wondering if the chief had finally lost his mind. The working class rooted for Itoro like he was their underdog hero. And the street boys? They started calling themselves heirs in waiting. Inside the Omoboriowo mansion, Chief Dimeji sat upright in his hospital bed, wearing a loose white agbada, pale but alert. A nurse adjusted his IV while his media consultant read the headlines aloud. They've turned the story into a circus, the consultant sighed. But there's still room to steer the narrative. Chief turned slowly toward the camera set up before him. Let's record it now. The consultant hesitated. Are you sure you're strong enough? I don't need strength. I need truth. That night, the video was released across all official Omoboriowo channels. Chief appeared seated, back straight, voice soft but unwavering. My name is Chief Dimeji Omoboriowo, and I speak today not as a businessman, but as a father. Years ago, I made a mistake. Someone I never should have. Through grace, that person returned into my life not as a threat, but as a blessing. His name is Itoro, and he is my son. I do not apologize for naming him my heir. I do not regret it. I stand by it. Let the world know. Integrity still matters. Blood still matters. And redemption is still possible. The video cut with a slow fade to black. Within hours, it had been viewed 11 million times. Slowly, sentiment began to shift. A viral comment under the post read, "He returned a ring he could have sold." If that's not character, I don't know what island. Some newspapers ran op-eds defending Itoro. A pastor praised Chief's humility in a Sunday sermon that went viral. But the opposition was far from done. Adisewa and Tokunbo watched the press coverage from Tokunbo's Ikoyi penthouse, the city lights glowing through the glass walls behind them. We need to bury him, Adisewa said coldly, swirling wine in her glass. Let's give them dirt, Tokunbo replied. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a file stamped with red ink. It contained records, some real, some forged. A juvenile arrest for vagrancy, an altercation with a market vendor. A night in police custody after a raid on the Underbridge settlement. It's not hard, Tokunbo smirked. Everyone's got something. We just curate the narrative. By morning, blogs were ablaze with damning headlines. Omoboriowo heir arrested as teen, hidden criminal past, exclusive, new heir once accused of theft in Onitsha market, Can a man with a record run Nigeria's largest tech empire? Itoro woke to a phone vibrating non-stop. His name was everywhere for the wrong reasons. He scrolled through the posts, his chest tightening. Comments flooded in. Nah, this one go lead company? Criminal O, make Unna, return our shares now, now. He go sell the company and run. They should DNA test him again. Inside the estate, Itoro paced. He didn't eat, he didn't sleep, he barely spoke. Chief noticed his retreat, but the doctors insisted he rest, so he watched helplessly from the hospital bed, eyes dark with frustration. Itoro stood one night in front of a full-length mirror, staring at himself. The suit, the mansion, the legacy. But the reflection didn't match what he felt inside. He heard his mother's voice again, faint and distant. Shine no matter the dust, my son, but never lose your soul. He walked into his room and scribbled a note. Then he disappeared. The next morning was chaos. Itoro's bed was empty, his phone was off, the staff hadn't seen him, no guards reported movement. Chief was informed immediately. His blood pressure spiked. He demanded they find him at any cost. But Itoro had vanished into the Lagos streets once more, just hours before the family's final press conference that was meant to introduce him to the world officially. The envelope came wrapped in brown paper, tied with red thread, no return address. The writing on the front was small, careful, and precise, like someone who wasn't used to writing, but had thought long and hard about every letter. Chief Dimeji Omoboriowo held it in his trembling hands inside his hospital room. His heart, already weakened by stress and betrayal, thudded with dread. He recognized the handwriting immediately. Itoro. He tore the envelope open, careful not to rip what was inside. The letter was written in ink, not typed. Each line scratched with weight. Dear Sir, I'm sitting beside my mother's grave in Calabar. The air smells like home, like wet sand and mango trees, like truth. I never knew this place well, she was too sick to bring me here often. But I remember the last time we came. I was 5, she sat me on this very ground, made a kara from a small fire, and told me stories about you. She never said your name, but she said my father had fire in his spirit, and eyes like rain before a storm. That's how I knew it was you when I looked at you the first time. Something inside me said, that's him. I didn't run because of the press, or the lies. I ran because I don't belong in your world. The suits, the boardrooms, the chandeliers, the way people bow when I walk in. It doesn't feel like respect. It feels like fear. And I don't want to be feared. My mother taught me to walk with empty hands and a full heart. She used to say, better to die poor and clean than rich and lost. I didn't understand it then. I think I do now. You're offering me the world, but the boy you're giving it to still eats bread like it's treasure, still sleeps with one eye open, still wonders if someone will chase him away for standing too long in a fancy lobby. So I came here to remember who I am. I'm not rejecting you. I'm just trying to find myself. And I don't know how long that will take. Thank you for trying to love me. Please forgive me if I'm hard to love. Itoro. The letter fell from Chief's hands as he pressed his palm to his eyes, trying to stop the tears from falling. But it was too late. The dam had broken. He waved off the nurses, grabbed his phone, and called the private pilot he hadn't used in months. Prepare the jet. I'm going to Calabar. Hours later, the sleek white jet landed quietly at Margaret Ekpo International Airport. No entourage, no press, no fanfare. Just a man with weary eyes and a crumpled letter in his coat pocket. A black Prado drove him through winding roads until the red sands and coconut trees swallowed the cityscape. They arrived at a small cemetery behind a crumbling Catholic church. There were no polished tombstones here, only wooden crosses, tilted markers, and faded paint. And there, under the shade of a pawpaw tree, sat Itoro. He didn't look up when the SUV stopped. Chief stepped out, walking slowly toward him. He saw the boy hunched beside a small grave with a handmade plaque that read, Ekayet en Sekpong, 1966, 2005, loved until the last breath. A white cloth covered the mound. A single hibiscus flower lay on top. Itoro's back was straight, hands resting on his knees. He didn't speak, neither did Chief. For nearly 5 minutes, The silence between them held everything that needed to be said. Then, slowly, Chief sat beside him on the red earth. His agbada gathered dust, his eyes glistened. He reached out and touched Itoro's shoulder. A simple touch. Itoro turned. Their eyes met. Chief whispered, "I'm sorry." Itoro looked away, swallowing hard. "I don't know how to be a son," he murmured. "And I don't know how to be a father to a stranger," Chief replied. "But maybe we can learn. Together." There was another long pause. Then Itoro asked the question he'd carried for weeks. "Why now?" Chief inhaled deeply, voice cracking as he replied, "Because now, I need you. Not as an heir, not as proof that I was a good man once. I need you as a son." Itoro's chest rose and fell. His lips parted, but no words came. Instead, he leaned forward, laid his forehead gently against the wooden plaque of his mother's grave, and closed his eyes. Chief's arm wrapped around his shoulder, holding him close. For the first time they wept together, not as Billionaire and Beggar, not as names in headlines, but as father and son finally finding each other. Back in Lagos, the war drums beat louder. Adesewa entered the boardroom of a private medical commission, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. Flanked by 3 lawyers and Tokunbo, she placed a sealed file on the table. "Official request for mental health evaluation of Chief Dimeji Omoboriowo," she declared. The panel of doctors looked at her, stunned. "On what grounds?" one asked. She smiled coldly. "Paranoia, impulsive decisions, hallucinations of lineage, emotional instability." And she glanced at Tokunbo. "Failure to recognize long-standing board protocols." She placed photos of Chief embracing Itoro, the viral videos, the letter. "He needs help, and until he gets it, I'm requesting temporary power of attorney." The doctors exchanged worried glances. The empire was about to face its biggest rupture yet. The gavel struck once, sharp and cold, silencing the murmurs in the courtroom. Lagos, State High Court, Ikoyi. The walls smelled of old wood and older secrets. Lawyers adjusted their robes. Reporters whispered into phones. The air was electric, charged with legacy, power, and scandal. At the plaintiff's bench sat Adesewa Omoboriowo, clad in a deep gray suit, makeup pristine, expression unreadable. Beside her, Tokunbo Ajayi whispered quietly to her legal team. Across the aisle sat Chief Dimeji Omoboriowo, wrapped in a simple ash agbada, eyes heavy, shoulders thinner than before. Beside him was Itoro, who wore a black suit with no tie, his face calm but unreadable until you looked into his eyes. There, storms brewed. The case, Adesewa Omoboriowo versus Chief Dimeji Omoboriowo and Itoro Nsekpong. The accusation, mental instability, coercion, and unfit decision-making. The stakes, billions in inheritance, control of a conglomerate, and the soul of a family. Adesewa's lead counsel rose first, voice crisp and practiced. "Your Honor, this case is not about jealousy, it's about protection. My client seeks to protect her father from manipulation and emotional coercion. She fears deeply that recent decisions made under emotional duress may irreparably damage not just their family but thousands of employees, shareholders, and public trust in Omoboriowo Holdings." She glanced at Itoro with a carefully measured smirk. A young man with a history of vagrancy, no education, no proven identity, and an arrest record has suddenly become the heir of Nigeria's most influential tech empire? That's not redemption. That's opportunism. The defense stood next. "Your Honor," Chief's lawyer said, calm but firm, "this is not a case of mental instability. This is a case of regret. Of a daughter who cannot accept that her father has chosen to right an old wrong, even if it shakes the comfort of the world she's always known." Witnesses were called. The family physician testified first. The chief has suffered 2 minor heart episodes, but neither has impacted his cognitive capacity. He remains mentally sound. Adesewa's team countered with recorded conversations, private voice notes of Chief Dimeji talking to himself at night. One played aloud, "She has AK's eyes. Maybe I'm hallucinating. Or maybe this is punishment. Gasps in the gallery. The judge remained stone-faced. Itoro was called next. He walked to the stand slowly, placing his palm on the Bible with quiet reverence. Do you swear to tell the truth? I do. Saturday. The opposing lawyer pounced. Mr. Nsekpong, isn't it true you were arrested in 2014? Yes. For theft? I was arrested during a police sweep of the underbridge. I had no ID, so I was detained. Why were you living under the bridge? My mother died. I had nowhere else to go. Didn't you try to find your father? I didn't know his name. The lawyer leaned in. So you just appeared one day, outside his company, returned a diamond ring worth 180 million, and somehow ended up in his will? Itoro looked at the jury, then at the judge. I returned the ring because it wasn't mine. I didn't ask for anything. Chief Omoboriowo found me, not the other way around. Are you in this for the money? No. Itoro replied, voice low. I'm in this because I want to know who I am. Silence. Even the judge lowered his pen. Then Chief was called. He stood slowly, aided by a walking stick, his agbada trailing behind him like a cloak. His voice was soft at first. I've built empires, lost friends, made enemies, but nothing haunts me like the woman I left behind. He looked at Adesewa. She's not lying when she says I wasn't always present. I was a father in spreadsheets, not in spirit. But that doesn't make me mad. It makes me human. He turned to the judge. When I looked at Itoro, I saw her. Ikayet. The only woman who ever loved me without price tags. I did a DNA test. I checked his story. I asked God if this was real. And the answer came not through miracles but through silence. A silence only truth can bring. His voice cracked. Your Honor, I'm not naming Itoro my heir because of guilt. I'm naming him because I see in him the values I buried beneath ambition: honor, loyalty, humility. Adesewa stood abruptly. And me? What about me? Chief faced her. I gave you everything, but I couldn't give you what I never had: a family that wasn't broken. Then came the final exhibit. Chief's lawyer opened a small velvet envelope and removed a weathered sheet of paper. This is a letter, he said, written by Eka Nsekpong on her deathbed, hand-delivered to the Sisters of Mercy Orphanage in Calabar. He handed a copy to the judge and read aloud. If he ever finds this child, tell him not to feel guilt. He will suffer, but he will rise. And if Dimeji ever holds him, tell him I forgive him. The courtroom froze. Itoro's jaw tightened. Chief wept. Even Adesewa blinked rapidly, her fingers trembling on the table. The judge leaned back, his gavel resting beside him. I've heard enough, he said. This case is not simple. It is soaked in years of silence, pride, and pain. But justice does not fear mess. He turned to the court clerk. I will deliver my judgment in 72 hours. The gavel dropped. Court adjourned. The once quiet gates of the Omoboriowo estate now pulsed with chaos. Outside, a sea of reporters, camera crews, protesters, and supporters clogged the narrow Victoria Island street. Street vendors sold printed T-shirts with Itoro's face on them, alongside sachets of water and hand fans bearing the words "Beggar to Billionaire" and "Street no be curse." Drones buzzed overhead. Security officers fought to keep order as influencers live-streamed from every corner. The family estate, once a fortress of privacy, had become a spectacle. And at the center of it all, two names dominated every headline: Itoro, Nsekpong Adesewa, Omoboriowo. The public was divided. Social media flared with hashtags: number justice for Adesewa, number Itoro rising, number Omoboriowo inheritance gate. But while the world feasted on drama, the cracks beneath the surface were widening, and Tokunbo Ajayi was the first to fall. The news broke like a tsunami. Vice President's son linked to billion procurement fraud. Tokunbo Ajayi allegedly laundered funds through shell companies. Whistleblower leaks audio of Tokunbo bribing state officials. One morning, Tokunbo simply disappeared. No calls, no messages, no farewell. By afternoon, his office was shuttered, his apartment empty, his passport flagged. Sources claimed he fled to Dubai, others said South Africa. But one thing was certain: he left Adisewa to face the storm alone. Adisewa tried to fight back, tried to hold the line with press conferences, counter-accusations, and desperate appeals. But the media began turning on her. Op-eds accused her of greed. Footage surfaced of her slapping Itoro at the hospital. A former maid from the estate told the press how she had once mocked the poor as born to serve. The court of public opinion was ruthless, and slowly, the darling of Nigeria's elite became a symbol of entitlement unraveling. She sat one night in her marble bathroom, surrounded by untouched wine, silent candles, and half-packed suitcases, and cried. Meanwhile, Itoro stood in a different world entirely. He had removed the suit, slipped on a simple brown caftan, and returned to the streets not as a fugitive, but as a seeker. He walked through Ojuelegba, where his life had once been a rotating blur of hunger and noise. This time, he wasn't running from it. He was walking into it with purpose. He carried 2 bags of food, soft bread rolls, bean cakes, water, and little packets of fried fish. At every street corner, he stopped to share. "Take," he said to an old beggar crouched beside a broken bus stop. "No strings." The beggar took the bread, eyes squinting. "God bless you, young man." No recognition, not even a flicker, and yet, it felt beautiful. He found his way to the same concrete slab he once used as a pillow, beside the fence of a high school wall. He Saturday closed his eyes, listened to the city breathe. Somewhere nearby, boys laughed while playing football barefoot. A preacher shouted from a rickety speaker. An Egbero cursed at a Danfo driver. Lagos was still Lagos. He smiled, because for the first time in weeks, he wasn't Chief Demeji's son. He wasn't the heir, or the scandal, or the courtroom curiosity. He was Itoro. Just Itoro. A few streets away, Chief Demeji sat quietly in the back of a tinted SUV, watching from a distance. He had followed his son, not to interfere but to witness. What he saw wasn't a boy playing Billionaire. He saw a man who hadn't forgotten where he came from, and his chest swelled with something far deeper than pride. Peace. The next morning, tension returned. Everyone, press, staff, family, board members, shareholders waited with bated breath for the judge's ruling. The High Court was surrounded like a festival ground. The courtroom itself buzzed with power. Adisewa sat rigidly at her table, expression carved from glass. Chief entered slowly, assisted by 2 aides, followed by Itoro, whose eyes were calm once again. The judge entered and took his seat. The room stood. Then silence fell like a curtain. The judge adjusted his glasses, leaned into the microphone, and began. "This court has reviewed all evidence presented, including medical records, testimonies, audio recordings, and the letter from the late Ekaet and Sekpong. What we've seen is not a case of fraud. It is a case of fractured bloodlines, of broken trust, of power clashing with identity. The law must not only reflect precedent, it must reflect justice." He paused. The room held its breath. Then, he raised the final ruling document in his hand. The heir of the Omoboriowo Empire shall be, Itoro and Sekpong. The words echoed through the courtroom like the toll of a bell, heavy, final, absolute. Gasps filled the air. Reporters scrambled for headlines. Phones buzzed. Cameras clicked like a hailstorm of judgment. Itoro sat motionless. His hands, folded tightly on his lap, didn't move. But his eyes shimmered, staring into the wood grain of the courtroom bench, trying to process what it meant to win a battle he never asked to fight. At the plaintiff's table, Adisewa Omoboriowo didn't blink. Her face remained neutral, but her fingers trembled as they clutched her chair, and then, suddenly, she broke. A single sob escaped, unexpected, followed by another, and another. She turned away, covering her face as her shoulders shook in silence. For the first time in her life, she was no longer the daughter of a titan. She was just a woman left behind by a storm she helped create. Chief Demeji reached out gently toward her as she stood to leave, but she brushed past him like a ghost. The heels of her designer shoes echoed one last time through the courtroom as she vanished from the chambers. 3 weeks later, Chief Demeji Omoboriowo officially retired. The press conference was held on the penthouse rooftop of Omoboriowo Tower, under the golden Lagos sun, with the city skyline stretched behind like a canvas of ambition. Reporters, investors, political dignitaries, and former staff sat in rows. Chief Demeji took the podium, thinner now, slower in movement, but still commanding. "I have lived for profit," he began. "Built towers, chased contracts, shaped the skyline. But no amount of wealth compares to the joy of seeing your past return to you not for revenge, but for restoration." He turned to Itoro, who stood at his side. "I built this empire, but he will redefine it. I give you your new CEO, Itoro Nsekpong Omoboriowo." The applause was thunderous. Itoro stepped forward, adjusting the microphone. There was no speechwriter, no teleprompter, just him, a man born in dust, now standing in the clouds. "I was not raised with power. I was raised with silence. I've slept beside gutters and under stars, watched power abuse the voiceless, and I've learned that empathy is not weakness, it's the greatest strength a leader can have. I will lead this company not as a prince who inherited a crown, but as a man who knows what it means to have nothing. To every street boy, to every orphan, to every girl told she's not enough, I see you. And this legacy is for you." The next day, Itoro launched the Akat Foundation for Abandoned Children, pledging $2 billion in seed funding. But he didn't stop there. He converted the Omoboriowo family mansion, the same house where servants once whispered about his presence, into a world-class orphanage school, bearing a new plaque at the gate. The Akat Home of Light, where forgotten children learned to shine. The rooms were repainted with murals. The chandeliers were left untouched, as a reminder that orphans could dream as high as any heir. When asked why he did it, he simply said, "This house raised power. Now, it will raise hope." Meanwhile, the company began to shift. Under Itoro's leadership, Omoboriowo Holdings entered a new era of innovation. He partnered with local tech hubs in Yaba, offering mentorship programs to street-savvy coders. He launched AI-driven distribution systems for rural communities. He eliminated outdated hierarchies, introducing open-door leadership and social impact boards. Young Nigerians, once skeptical, now saw in him a leader who looked like them, sounded like them, understood them. The public embraced his story. Billboards across Lagos bore his face, from Beggar to Billionaire, the Itoro way. For the first time in modern Nigerian history, a corporate legacy had passed not through bloodlines of wealth, but through the marrow of survival. Yet even amid triumph, pain lingered. In a surprise public event hosted by the Akayet Foundation, Adesewa appeared. She wore no makeup, no cameras, just a simple dress and tired eyes. She walked up to the podium during Q&A and spoke quietly. "You don't have to forgive me, but I forgive you for taking what I thought was mine. I was wrong, about you, about what matters." The room fell silent. Itoro stepped forward. He didn't hug her, but he placed a hand on her shoulder and said, "I forgive you, and I love you, from a distance." The moment went viral. But more than viral, it healed. A week later, Chief Demeji sat alone in his garden, sipping kunu and watching the koi fish swim beneath the lily pads. He looked content. "Legacy," he whispered, "isn't what you leave in your will, it's what you leave in their hearts." Just then, his hand trembled slightly. He set the cup down, tried to call out, but his voice caught in his throat. The fish kept swimming. The garden wind blew gently, and Chief Demeji Omoboriowo leaned slowly back in his chair, his eyes closing against the warm Lagos Sunday. Cliffhanger. Chief's health suddenly declines. The sun had barely risen when the mansion staff found Chief Demeji Omoboriowo seated peacefully in his garden chair, his head tilted slightly toward the soft winds of dawn. A gentle smile rested on his lips, and his hand resting loosely on the armrest was still warm when Itoro reached him. The son sat beside the father, saying nothing at first. He held that hand tightly, letting the silence do what words never could. The morning birds sang their first hymns, and just like that, the man who once ruled Nigeria's skyline drifted into eternity, not in the roar of boardrooms or the flash of headlines, but in the stillness of reconciliation. The news of Chief Omoboriowo's passing hit Lagos like a silent earthquake. Flags at all Omoboriowo holding subsidiaries were lowered. Channels Television ran a 48-hour tribute. The president released a statement. And yet, the most powerful tribute didn't come from any dignitary. It came from the streets. Vendors who once stood outside his office gates, drivers who once waited for hours while he closed deals, beggars who remembered the security men pushing them back, all of them came out. The funeral, held at the Lagos Cathedral, overflowed with more than wealth and power, it overflowed with humanity. A line of orphans from the Ekaet Home of Light held candles and sang softly in Efik. Board members in fine agbadas sat beside street boys in borrowed suits. Celebrities and governors mingled with teachers and tailors. Itoro stood at the altar, strong but aching, his eyes sweeping over the sea of faces, some crying, some stoic, all present. At the final resting place in a private burial ground overlooking the Lekki Lagoon, Itoro stepped forward with a folded letter in his hand. He cleared his throat, voice raw. He wrote this weeks ago, gave it to me without fanfare, told me, read it when it matters. So here at Island, he opened the letter slowly. My son, if you are reading this, then I have become memory. Don't mourn too long. I've lived a life most men only dream of, but my greatest joy wasn't in the towers I built, the jets I flew, or the contracts I won. It was in the day you called me father, even after all I failed to be. You are my redemption, you are my echo, and I go knowing that the world is better. Because you are still in it. Live not as a king above men. Live as a servant among souls. And no matter what power you hold, never forget Ekaet's whisper. Shine, no matter the dust. Itoro folded the paper slowly and knelt beside the grave. The sun hit the marble headstone, casting a long shadow over the dirt. The flowers he placed, simple white hibiscus, matched the one his mother once laid on her own father's grave. The world turned slowly, but something had shifted forever. That night, after the guests had left and the estate was once again silent, Itoro stood on the balcony of the CEO's suite, overlooking the glimmering lights of Lagos. The skyline, his father's legacy, stood tall before him. The hum of distant traffic, the whisper of wind through trees, the rhythmic buzz of generators, it was all familiar. Yet it felt different now. Quieter, sharper, real. On his right hand, a single diamond ring caught the moonlight, the same ring that started it all. The one he returned as a beggar. The one that made the world turn its head. The one that now rested as both reminder and prophecy. He turned it slowly on his finger. Not as a symbol of wealth, but of destiny. Behind him, framed on the wall, was the only photo he had of his mother. Ekaet. Holding him as a baby, smiling through fatigue, eyes alive with fire. And in his mind, he could hear her lullaby again. Shine, no matter the dust. He closed his eyes, whispering, "Thank you for finding me." And then he stepped back into the room, into a life redefined not by power, but by purpose. As the screen fades to black, a final message appears. In dust, a diamond. In pain, a legacy. The story of a beggar, a father, and a nation reminded that redemption is never too late. Was this story worth the tears? If it touched your heart, don't just scroll. Like, share, and hit that subscribe button for more powerful Nigerian dramas. Comment below. What would you have done if you were Itoro? Your support keeps these stories alive. Let's grow this emotional journey together.